Welcome, comic lovers. Garvin, the old comic guy, coming at you with another comic haul. Another one from my local comic shop, AllStar Comics. And let's get right into it. All right. We have Justice League of America. This is one of the classic crossovers. Justice League, and I've done this before, but created by Julia Schwartz, Gardner Fox, Mike Sikowski. And it's supposed to be the Silver Ages version of the Justice Society of America. First appeared in Brave and the Bold, number 28, 1960. The series ran from 1960 to 1987. This is issue 195. Jerry Conway is a writer. George Perez did the cover, which is probably why it appeals. This one's really kind of faded. It was a dollar bin, so I'm not really upset or anything, but it's just really cool. George Perez, with John Beatty on the inside. Ben Oda was the letterer, and the editor is Len Wein. Ultra Humanites gathering a new secret society of supervillains to get rid of 10 particular superheroes from both Earths. Supposedly, this is gonna break up the cosmic balance and eliminate all superheroes from one Earth. They don't know which one. Inside, and it's still in here and intact, the JLA JSA pinup by George Perez, which is pretty famous for us old guys. It's pretty cool. They often weren't intact because we pulled them out and put them on our walls. Yeah. And then our walls got filled with girls' posters. Yeah. And then we have, I shared that Richard had, one of my subscribers had mentioned in one of the comments about the AllStar Companions, so I've been reading that. So yeah, AllStar Comics. This is actually not AllStar Comics, but it's officially JSA returns AllStar Comics. But I'll give you some history of the AllStar Comics briefly. Anthology comic book series published from 1940 to 1951, and then revived in the 70s. The 70s comics are fairly easy to come by, usually in dollar bins, $2 bins, depending upon condition, except the first one, which is the first appearance of Power Girl, which that one can get quite pricey. Originally, this was a joint publication, so it was published jointly by two different comic companies in 1940. Those companies were All American Publications and National Periodical Publications. At this point, National Periodical Publications had merged and become National Periodical or Detective Comics, DC. The series, it wasn't actually given the bullet and all that it does, like it has here, until many years later, and then it wasn't given the standard DC bullet we know until in the 70s. So the two companies merged in 46, and that's officially when it became DC Comics, but it was still published as National Periodical like it is here, and would have that emblem until the mid-70s. AllStar Comics, there was no hyphen initially. I know, how much they hyphenate stuff, I'm surprised at that, but it did not have a hyphen. And chiefly famous for featuring the Justice Society as of number 3. That's when the Justice Society debuted, which was December of 1940. Was the lead feature for the rest of the series run, even after it came back. There would be at least one separate feature, like Hop Harrigan and others, that would run in number 8, which was in 42. Wonder Woman had her first appearance in a solo adventure unconnected with the Justice Society. And the schedule varied like a lot. So it was quarterly initially for the first like 4 issues. Then it went to bi-monthly, which would be every other month, from 5 through 17, so 41 through 43. Then with the paper shortages during the war, it went back to quarterly. Most publications went to quarterly. If you happen to be from Canada, Canada actually stopped publishing much of its golden age line of comics, and I will say that most of them did not come back. And they have, what do they call them? Canadian white? Something like that. There's something specifically they call it. I don't remember exactly, but when I hear it, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's it. Anyway, because they stopped publication to save paper for the wartime effort. And then in 1946 through 51, it continued with, what did it continue with? Bi-monthly. And then to 57, well, till 1951, but number 57. And then it went to AllStar Western, which ran from 1958 or 1951 to 1961. And that was number 58 to 119. And basically the superheroes had waned after the war, and this had westerns like Johnny Thunder. Johnny Thunder is the same name though as the JSA member, no relation. Madam 44, Super Chief, others. In 1976, the series was revived by Jerry Conway, once again featuring the Justice Society of America, and this feature basically ignored the All-Star Westerns and started with number 58, which is also the first appearance of Power Girl. That's the one that's pricey. In June 77, which is issue number 66, that's when they added the hyphen and to the name, making it AllStar Comics, and that would last until issue 74 in 1978. This one was a limited series set in 1945, starring the Justice Society and Stalker, who was a warrior whose soul was owned by a demon. Ended up going against the JSA. Stalker had been a backup feature in its own little world. It was created by Paul Levitz and Steve Ditko. I believe in one of the first editions or first issue specials, maybe, or maybe it just had its own series, but Stalker did have a series at one point, like the first Starfire, or the second Starfire, technically. Anyway, it didn't last incredibly long. And this starts with, not this one, the JSA All-Star Comics #1, and then it went into Adventure Comics. Basically, they all say JSA Returns, and then it's Adventure, All-Star 1, Adventure, All-American, National, Sensation, Smash, Star Spangled, Thrilling, and then All-Star Comics #2, which is right here. The covers by Dave Johnson. If I recall right, he did the covers for all of them, but I could be wrong. I don't. The writers James Robinson and David Goyer, and then the art is William Rosado with John Dell and Ray Krissing. The story retcons, one of the things about it, though, is the story retcons some things. And one of the things that it retcons is the Adom donning his Finhead costume, his second costume, for the first time in 1945. Originally, so that would be right before the end of the war. Originally, he wasn't first seen wearing it until Flash Comics #98, which was 1948. So they're doing it before the war, not after the war. Does it make a difference? I don't know. It kind of does, because technically that's when he developed his Adom punch, his stronger punch. He was shown to be a superhuman at that point. Of course, that is explained by Roy Thomas in AllStar Squadron, and they do a thing on explaining that. So I thought that was cool. Let's talk about AllStar Squadron, right? So we've talked a lot about this series. What's some other stuff I want to mention? Oh, in a nod to the original AllStar Comics, Roy Thomas tried to include at least a cameo of Hawkman, in the Golden Age Hawkman, in every issue. If you don't know, Golden Age Hawkman was in every issue of AllStar Comics, from its first one all the way through 57. He did appear in every issue, even the first two before the JSA went in there, became the team. He had a solo story in 1 and in 2. So he was in all of those 57 issues then. And so Roy was trying to do that here. He was, and it worked until issue 49. The artwork for the issue was printed without Hawkman's cameo included. It was supposed to be there, making it the only issue of the series where he does not appear. Hawkman appears in every issue of AllStar Squadron, including the annuals, even if it's only a cameo. That's cool. I don't know if you know that. This is number, what do we have, number 17. Obviously, Roy's scripting. The cover is Joe Kubert and Gasper Solidiano. And Adrian Gonzalez and Rick Hoberg do the art. The letterer is Adom Kubert. So Joe's son is now one of his youngest sons. I'm not sure which one's younger, Andy or Adam, but is working. So that's cool. The story is called To Slay the Body Electric inside, but the cover uses the original name, The Trial of Robot Man. And it's loosely based on the Robot Man story from Star Spangled Comics number 15 back in 1942. The sleazy attorney's name was changed from Sam Slug to Sam Slattery in this one. Some interesting things. So I started looking at, like, there's historical references, because Roy wants to place it in the right time zone. So on page 8, panel 6, we can kind of tell that Robot Man was arrested on the 25th of January 1942, because that panel has a picture of the New York Chronicle edition for the 26th of January 1942, and it's talking about it, so it would have happened just before then. Also on page 14, panel 2, we can tell that at the earliest, Robot Man's trial would be about the 4th of February 1942, and because in another little news article that's going on at the time, King Farouk of Egypt is abdicating. So that happened. So that's it had to be after he did that. And so if I recall right, that was done in February 3rd, 1942. So he had to have done it. It had to be after that. It could be the day after, could be a week after, because they'd still be talking about it. It was a big deal. I wasn't there, but a big deal. Also, Henry King Brainwave appears in this issue at the end of it. And we're going to talk a lot about the history today. I did find a bunch of AllStar Squadron, so we're gonna really go into the history. Jerry Ordway's doing the art and the cover. Editor's Len Wen. they're basically responding to Brainwave's challenge. The All-Stars have to fight their way into the Perisphere to save the JSAers. So we're talking about the Perisphere. And I realized that that's just something in comics, right? Like, really? Why would anybody build that? Well, and then I thought, I'm old and I know crap. This is from the 1940 World's Fair in New York. You'll see the Perisphere and the Triescalon there. That was May 11th, 1940. See, you can even see. How cool is that? And there's wonderful things. Double dividends on your 40s vacation. Just some awesome, awesome things. Admission, 50 cents. Children 3 to 13 inclusive, 25 cents. Special rates for groups. How cool is that? And let's talk about all the different things that were there. And there's more. Got to be careful with old things. We tend to fall apart. I don't even know if this is all going to show. And then there's, like, let's see, that I think is facing the right direction. Cool. So awesome. All the rides, the shows from all over the world. This was an amazing event. They had Dorothy Lamour was there, and she's pictured getting a 15-cent snack. 15 cents. Oh, man. Hot dogs and hamburgers were a dime. Coffee's 5 and 10 cents. Coke and other bottled beverages were a nickel. Milk was 5 or 10 cents. In the city and at the fair, you can have a breakfast for 25 cents. One lone quarter. A lunch for 45 cents and a dinner for 65 cents. And they had foreign food set up. 80 different places to eat. How crazy. Anyway, so it's a real place. It was built for the fairs and was left in place. And after it was demolished sometime thereafter the war ended. Actually, it might have started before the war ended being demolished, just for parts. But yeah, how cool is that? I want to share that, right? So let's keep going with the comics. I just thought that was cool. AllStar Squadron number 20. Basically, the All-Stars are going into Brainwave's illusion. Luthor is trying to defeat Superman with the Power Stone. This thing made a few stories be, well, retconned, but that wasn't even a word yet. So, yeah, so a few stories were kind of changed to make them fit with the timeline. At this point in history, Luthor's first name has not been given, though. We don't know that he's Lex. He's not the original mad scientist. Ultra Humanite actually predates him as a mad scientist, and so does Dr. Sivana. After being traumatized with the illusion and of being a mass murderer, Green Lantern quotes Oppenheimer. Interesting, Oppenheimer, relatively recent film, who was a physicist among those who are credited with being the father of the atomic bomb, and by saying, "I am become death, the shatterer of worlds." I am become, and he just keeps quoting that. Interestingly enough, he wouldn't have said that yet. Like, Oppenheimer was working on the bomb in 40, this would have been placed in 42. So, yeah. That's kind of cool. So about the term retcon, so first known use of the term retroactive continuity was by Roy Thomas in his letter column, where he says, since the AllStar Squadron team is an example of retroactive continuity, which we take to say retcon, but at the time that was not a thing, since they were retroactively inserted into the history of the DC superheroes, and the series rewrote portions of already established DC canon published during the 1940s, it makes sense. That's actually where we get the word retcon. How cool is that? There's also a fan letter from Anthony Cardano published in this issue. And Anthony is a writer and blogger about comics, including interviews with comic creators. In the letter, he talks about the AllStar Squadron fan club and their newsletter. I didn't know they had one. So that's pretty cool. And then issue 26. This is the one of the parts where the Infinity Incorporated's here. Some of the All-Stars have vanished, replaced with supervillains now from 1983, and Brainwave Jr. convinces the other remaining heroes that he's a good guy and helps them search for the Ultra-Humanite who is in Mount St. Helens. This story arc has its initial setup in issue 17, solid up in number 18, minor boss battle at 19 and 20, which we just saw here. This is all the same story arc that's happening. They're just kind of set up in this long process. Battle as minions here in 25 and 26. I did get 2 of them, so that's cool. And then the end boss battle is actually annual number 2. I didn't get that one, or he didn't have that one. And they actually start talking about repercussions in 27. So not only did Roy Thomas take 10 plus issues to tell an amazing story introducing the Infinity Incorporated in the process, which are new heroes, or were new heroes then, but he kind of set up the Mount St. Helens eruption, which would happen 38 years after this story, which it did in early 1980, early March, in March, I think. Early 1980. So this was written in 83, so it was in his past, but he was writing about it and kind of setting it up in a weird way. I think that's cool. This is Jerry Ordway, Mike Macklin, and the cover's Jerry Ordway completely. And then I did get a couple of 27s. So they're wrapping up the Ultra War. The story has Dr. Fate hunting for the Spectre, who's under Kolak's control with a plan to destroy Earth. And then they bring it back together to finish off that one with issue 28. And this one does bring in Sargon the Sorcerer to help fight. Kolak gets the Ring of Life and the full helmet of Naboo, which sets up Dr. Fate being in the half helmet. They do talk about when he gets back, when they find, basically everything ends up going through the infinity of dimensions with Kolak. So they lose the full helmet, they lose the Ring of Life. those do end up making appearances back. I don't think we ever learn how Dr. Fate got the full helmet back. But yeah. And then issue 29. This is a Sir Justin retelling a story that's adapted from Leading Comics number 3. A few things that are not quite right, like Alexander mentioned Zeus in the original tale. He mentioned Zeus here. In the original tale, he referred to Jupiter, which is Roman, and he was a Macedonian, so it wouldn't make sense. Also, in the original tale, each one of the 7 soldiers are helped by a local person. None of them were mentioned in the retold story except for Sammy Singer and Leo Star's robots. Green Arrow mentions that history says that Alexander will die at 31 from excess wine. I think currently we believe he died about 30. We believe he died at 32. And wine is just one of the possible ways he died. You'll find that history gets changed as we learn more. Yeah, that actually happens regularly. It's pretty crazy. What else? In the original tale, during the Trojan War, there was no Agamemnon, and Odysseus was called Ulysses, which is his Roman name, which again... and in this one, Nero is portrayed playing a lyre. And in the original tale, it was a fiddle, which would not be accurate. So, yeah. Issue 30. Which is... having the Black Dragon Society, which was based on a real society. So this is pretty cool. And then not nearly as nefarious, I promise. 32. So this sets up, though this is part 2 of the Crisis on Earth X, the prequel. And it shows the apparent death of most of the first Freedom Fighter team: Our Man, Miss America, Neon the Unknown, Invisible Hood, Red Torpedo, and Magno the Magnetic Man. And also has appearances by Uncle Sam, Doll Man, Midnight, and the rest of the All-Stars. So this is setting up the Freedom Fighters that ran in the 70s. Our Man... we're pretty familiar with. Rex Tyler, created by Ken Fitch, Bernard Bailey for National Allied Publications, Adventure Comics number 48, back in 1940. Some you may not be familiar with Miss America, so you know Our Man. Miss America is Joan Dale, created by Ed Wexler for Quality Comics, Military Comics number 1, 1941. And then we have... Neon the Unknown. He was created by Jerry Iger and Alex Bloom for Quality Comics, Hit Comics number 1 in 1940. The Invisible Hood, you can see him right there. Well, he's kind of invisible, so you can't, but pretend that outline is him. Created by Art Pinajan for for Quality Smash Comics number 1 from 1939. Wait, where's Red Torpedo? He not there, but he not on this picture. But Red Torpedo, created by Henry Kiefer for Quality Comics, Crack Comics number 1, 1940, and then Magno the Magnetic, created by Paul Gustafson for Quality Comics, Smash Comics number 13. Again from 1940. He does truly die in this issue. I should mention Uncle Sam was created by Will Eisner and Dave Berg for Quality Comics, National Comics number 1 back in 1940. Doll Man was created by Will Eisner for Quality Comics, Feature Comics number 27 back in 1939, which makes him a precursor to Marvel's Ant-Man and DC's Adom, the Silver Age Adom. And then Midnight, who's not on the cover, does appear, and he was created by Jack Cole for Quality Comics for their Smash Comics number 18. Interesting thing about that is, so Quality Comics editor Everett, they called him Busy Arnold, everyone kind of called him that, made a deal with Will Eisner to print his Spirit. And the idea was that the newspapers had come to Busy and said, we'd like to have something, we'd like to get on the comic bandwagon, we'd like to have something to insert. So he contracted with Will Eisner and wanted to produce this Spirit comic, and Eisner would get to write it like it would be for adults, a little bit more than for kids, and not like a pornographic or anything, just adult themes. But they made a contract where Eisner kept ownership of the character, and it was published in tabloid-sized inserts in 1940 in about 20 different newspapers. And then in Police Comics number 11 in 1942, they started, Quality started reprinting some of those and then started printing new ones. So Busy also tasked Jack Cole. So again, the war is looking like it's going to happen. It's 1941. And so he has Jack Cole create a similar character, a Spirit type character, which is Midnight. And Midnight actually, like I said, appeared in Smash Comics number 18. Midnight appeared in comics, like comic book format, before the Spirit. But the Spirit was already out in these tabloid-sized things that were in newspapers. And because Eisner was going to get drafted, Eisner would get drafted, and Busy didn't know that Eisner was going to make it home or not. So while he was printing the stories, and Jack Cole was one of the artists, one of the ghost artists during that time frame, he wanted his own character to keep going. Busy did, which was Midnight. Midnight was fairly popular. It did not surpass the Spirit. And when Will came back, the Spirit just, owned the show. Anyway, this is part of that. So we have this one, 33. So this is part 3 of the series. And I've shared that this is like a 5-issue thing. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Yep, 5 issues. And it's Crisis on Earth X. This is part 3. The Freedom Fighter team, most of us are familiar with. So Black Condor, the Ray, Phantom Girl, Doll Man, Human Bomb, and Red Bee. So Red Bee is not somebody that we're as familiar with. And then appearances by Rick Cannon and Tom Revere, and the first modern appearance of Neptune Perkins, the Golden Age character. So Black Condor came from Quality, was created by Will Eisner and Lou Fine for Crack Comics number 1. These are all Quality. Unless I say otherwise, they're all from Quality. I had mentioned Doll Man earlier. Human Bomb was Paul Gustafsson for Police Comics number 1 back in 1941. The Ray, or the Phantom Lady, was from Arthur F. Petty for Police Comics number 1. The Ray was Eisner and Fine again for Smash Comics number 14. And the Bee was created by Tony Bloom and Christopher Nichols for Hit Comics number 1, 1940. So Tony Bloom is the daughter of Alex Bloom, who I'd mentioned just a little bit ago, had created some of these, had been involved. Where was it? Oh man, when you want it, you can't think of it. Anyway, a creator, and Tony was his daughter. So that's pretty cool that they kept it in the family. Charles Nichols is really challenging. That's a house name. Busy owned that name. Yeah. So we actually, the Red Bee was created by Tony Bloom. That's the writer. She was a writer. Charles Nichols was the artist, except that name was used by at least 3 people during this time. So one would be, it was a house name for Iger Studios, and it was used by Charles Suadera, who created the Blackhawks, and who probably, looking at the art style, is probably the creator of the Red Bee. Genuinely, it's very similar. It looks like his artwork. I don't have originals to really sit down and play with, but Jack Kirby did it for about 3 months, and then Charles Wachkowski did it, and Wachkowski created the Blue Beetle. The Blue Beetle, so many different versions of the Blue Beetle. All 3 of them drew Blue Beetle over the time, but the Blue Beetle that we don't think about, the police officer who just, anyway, that Blue Beetle. So anyway, that's who created it. Tom Revere and Rick Cannon. So Tom's supposedly a descendant of Paul Revere, and Rick Cannon was, and at this point still dating Liberty Bell. They were created by Don Cameron and Chuck Winter, along with Liberty Bell, for Boy Commandos #1 in the Liberty Bell story. Let's see. And that was National Periodical. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Neptune Perkins was created by Gardner Fox and Joe Kubert for All American Publications for Flash Comics #66 back in 1945. And I mentioned the story arc is 31 to 35 on this, but it's actually integrating the quality characters that were Golden Age quality characters into the DC universe. That was the task at hand, and he's doing it. In 1956, DC obtained the rights to quality. That's when they got it. And then about 17 years later, in Justice League 107, they, that was 1973, they introduced the Freedom Fighters, which was a chunk of them, and that was the ones that had these Freedom Fighters, right, that then started their own series. What Roy did was implement all of quality by targeting their Golden Age crew and of team or whatever, and bringing them up. And since some of the quality characters had become part of the AllStar Squadron, it made sense. This is issue 35. There are, I did get 2 of them. And this is the final part. And in this, the Red Bee does die. Yeah. Just like Magno in the previous one. Number 36. This starts, it's part 1 of 2, basically dealing with the Earth S, so the Marvel family. So that's pretty cool. 43, we have Kung trading Liberty Bell for Tsunami and Starman's Gravity Rod. We have 2 44s. Firebrand's father is killed by the superpowered Nazis Night and Fog. And then now we're in the Crisis timeline. So Crisis on Infinite Earths. We have part 1 of a 4-part story where the All-Stars face off against the Monster Society of Evil from Earth S. And of course, these are crisis tie-ins. So I got 51 here, and then I got 54. So I got 1 and 4 of this story. The first one and the fourth one of the story. And then annual number 1. Awesome annual. So in here, it's a retelling and modifying of the Adom, Guardian, and Wildcat's origin. The Adom was created by Ben Flinton and Bill O'Connor for All American Publications, All American Comics number 19 in 1940. The Guardian was created by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon. You mean they created a shield-wielding hero? Yep. For All American Publications, Star Spangled Comics number 7 in 1942. And Ted Grant was created by, or Wildcat, was created by Bill Finger and Erwin Hassan for All American Publications, Sensation Comics number 1 in 1942. Wonderful All-Star Squadron haul. As always, he knows to watch out for me, so whenever he gets them, I get them. It's great. I did tell him, though, because I don't want him to, I don't want to abuse that relationship. So I told him, if you have somebody else that's interested, please, and if you let me know, I will gladly, as long as it's something that I have multiples of and more than enough for me to share, I don't mind doing that. And, I'll basically trade it back to him and I'll buy something else and then he can sell it. So he does know he has some he can get. Otherwise, I want them all, right? Because I just want them all, like Pokemon or something. All right, that's my haul with some added, the wonderful World's Fair flyer. How cool. It's amazing. 1,500 free exhibits. How cool. And in that day and age, it cost them $155 million. 39, and it cost that much. That's crazy. All right, you guys take care of yourselves. Have a good day.